my Hellion.
Defeated by 3 sticks and a dream. With the release of Rat of the Nine and 3 dungeons being reworked, we've seen some not normally used weapons and strategies applied to these dungeons to get the job done. Weapons you traditionally would not see typically in fire teams when trying to do endgame content. For example, in the first week for Spire of the Watcher, 1,000 Voices ended up going to the top of the charts for its unique ability to just stagger per season place. Now, for week 2, or rather week 3 I guess technically now, Ghost of the Deep is the current dungeon, and we're seeing the rise of another popular strategy, that being Winterbite Titans. And that is the build I want to show off today. Now, this strategy, or something similar to it, has been around for quite a bit now, but right now it's come around to be the perfect build for this current dungeon, and I'm going to make a wild guess and also say for the next dungeon, that being Prophecy, at least for the first boss going in. This combination just feeds off of encounters where you are constantly surrounded, where you get tons of trash mobs and you can build up stacks for your build, including Banner of War. It's just the ideal situation. Now, this isn't just a pointy stick, melee everything to death build. It actually does a couple of things very well for yourself and your teammates. First, you heal yourself and your teammates with Banner of War in the pulsating radius. And second, it provides a damage bonus to swords and melees for you and your teammates again around in the pulsing radius. So we get self-sustaining healing, we get a damage buff to our main source of damage for this build, and we also indirectly get Woven Mail, which gives us more damage resist anytime we get melee kills, or we pick up a Tangle, or we pick up an Aura of Power, which we also make very easily with this build. So let's talk about the gameplay loop. It's actually really simple, and once you get into the groove of things, you just kind of go on autopilot and still just smash through everything. The entire purpose of the build is to gain maximum stacks of Banner of War to abuse that healing and the damage buff, of course. You don't need to have max stacks, by the way, but obviously if you get more stacks, then your pulsating becomes faster, which means you get healed faster, and obviously you would want the most healing that you can get. Now, while that's happening with stacking Banner of War, you're also trying to accomplish one other objective, and that is to get either an Aura of Power or a Tangle to directly give you Woven Mail. Why do you want Woven Mail? Because you get a 45% damage resistance buff, so you become that much more unkillable. And given that this is a melee build and you're going to be in the faces of your enemies all the time, you want as much damage resist as you can possibly get. But more on that later. Let's first talk about the kit for the build. Let's start with our aspects. You already know one of them, Banner of War. This is for periodic healing, as well as giving us a damage buff to swords or melees, in this case the Glaive melee. It is a huge contributor to this build, and of course an absolute must-have. Now, the other aspect we're using is Into the Fray. Into the Fray states, destroying a Tangle or casting your super grants you Woven Mail for nearby allies. So, what I meant with Tangles earlier, this is part of it, where you just get free Woven Mail off of them. Additionally, while you have Woven Mail, your melee regeneration is also increased, and that's really helpful if you're using your melee to make those Tangles. As for our standard abilities, nothing really changes here out of the norm. Obviously, you only have one super, that's Blade Fury. You can use whatever barricade you'd like, whatever jump you'd like. We only have one melee, that being Frenzied Blade. And then lastly, for the grenade, I personally go with Grapple, because it just lets me get to locations faster when I need to be there. So that way I can keep my stacks up for Banner of War. But if you're doing content that has tons of champions, for example, then you could try to offer something like Shackle Grenade to stun unstops. And here are our fragments for them, starting from left to right. First, we have Thread of Warding. Pick up an Aura of Power, grants us Woven Mail. So this is the other very easy way to get Woven Mail. They pick up an orb. After you use your standard strand melee to just one-shot something, you'll make an orb, and you'll make a Tangle, so both of those things will just instantly give you Woven Mail. Or you could even use like a standard primary weapon to make an Aura Power with a Siphon and do the same thing. Next is Thread of Transmutation. While you have Woven Mail, Weapon Final Blows create a Tangle. So once you get your initial first one going off of, let's say, a strand melee, your engine then just becomes, okay, kill everything with a stick, and eventually I'll make a tangle, then I pick up the tangle or blow it up, and continue giving myself woven mail so I never lose it. Now the next two are completely optional, and you can change these if you'd like, but I personally went with Thread of Generation. Dealing damage generates more grenade energy, which is for my grapple, just to have it all the time. And then our fourth fragment is Thread of Continuity. Spin, unravel, and sever effects applied to targets have increased duration. We have ways of doing this outside of the Strand Kit and with our artifact. Speaking of the artifact, let's talk about the #1 mod in there for this build that's going to combine with both our exotic weapon and our exotic armor piece. So we're using Winterbite plus Syntheseps. Syntheseps provides a 100% damage buff to Glaive melees. Now on top of that, we're using the No Bell artifact mod, which gives us an additional 85% bonus damage to our Glaive melees. All you gotta do is just block for a second while something is hitting you, including your teammates, by the way, and then you proc No Bell. Once you have that, start beating everything up with a stick via your melee. And while we're talking about this blocking function here, I need to make a quick note because a lot of people will get this wrong. So when you're using glaives, normally what you would do is just simply hold block and keep mailing over and over and over for a little bit of a melee cancel, if you will, just to hit things faster. However, recently that has completely changed, and that's not what you should be now doing. Instead, you should be doing the full glaive combo, as it does more damage overall with the glaive melee system. So, in other words, don't be holding block while you're doing your melees. Instead, do full melee combos and occasionally use your block to try to take damage from something, which then makes No Bell proc again, and then you go back to just mailing normally without blocking. As for the rest of the artifact, here it is on screen in case you want to copy it. The mods I personally have on are Unraveling Ores, which allows us to get an orb or a tangle to give our weapons, our Strand weapons specifically, Unraveling Rounds, and then the boost gives Strand weapons bonus damage should the target be debuffed by Strand. Right next to that, we have Vile Weave comboing off with that. Targets hit by your tangles are severed, so a Strand debuff, and this also reduces the cooldown on tangles, so you can get one and pick one up much faster. Next is Disruption Spike. It increases the effects of Exhaust and Sever. So Sever you can already make tangles in this build, and then Exhaust can be applied by just using any overload weapon. Next we have the Arc combo, which is going to be Flashover and Defibrillating Blast. So Flashover will allow you to gain more damage for your Bolt Charge stacks and procs, and then also give you amplified when you get max stacks of Bolt Charge. Now the great thing about this is, once you do get max stacks of Bolt Charge and you become amplified, you then get another 15% damage resist to enemies. Then when you activate Bolt Charge, you will heal yourself every single time you do activate a Bolt Charge, as well as jolt the target on top of that. And the last mod worth mentioning is Limit Break. So Limit Break provides you a 30% damage buff to whatever super you're using, as long as you either are critically wounded or have a buff matching that element. In this case, a Strand buff. That's really easy with this build because, again, either picking up an Aura of Power or a Tangle will instantly give you Woven Mail, which is a Strand buff, and then when you pop your super after that, bang, free 30% extra damage. So with all of that mentioned, ideally in a boss fight, this is what you're doing. You're going to get as many stacks as you can for Banner of War, preferably up to X4 stacks, and then start the damage phase. At the start of the damage phase, you immediately block so the boss tries to hit you, and you proc No Bell. After proccing that, you start wailing on him with your melee, preferably somewhere in the range of 6 to 9 hits, something like that, because the timer on No Bell is not that high, and then rinse repeat until damage is over. There's also one quick PSA to make for any particular boss fight you're using this with, and that is, do not kill the enemies around you, unless they're like, you know, a yellow bar or like a tormentor or something crazy like that. Otherwise, keep the trash mobs around so you have your surrounded proc for your Syntheseps literally forever. And this includes having your hunters never using Tether, because if you use Tether in any surrounded boss fight, you will instantly kill all the adds and lose surrounded instantly, making your Synthos completely useless. If you need a 30% debuff instead of Tether, just use Tractor Cannon or Fellwinter's Helm. And finally, here are the armor mods for this build. Now, I'll be completely honest right away, there's not a whole lot you need for this, and you could do almost whatever you want. Now, some of the things that you should have on are probably going to be heavy-handed for the Syntho Gloves, because you want to make an Aura of Power every single time that you use your actual melee, and also using your grapple into melee as well. Then on your chest, you want to have the resist mods on for whatever particular activity you're doing for maximum resistance. Your boots, you actually do not need surge mods for this setup. So, you know, you would think, oh, you need stasis surge for the Winterbite. No, you're not using the projectile, you're just using the melee, so you do not need surges. Instead, you can put in things that will heal you or get your abilities back faster, like I have with Absolution and things like that. And in the class item, it's the same thing. Special Affinity to get greenback if I happen to need it. Outreach for reduced melee cooldown, and that's pretty standard, I'd say. You don't really need time dilation either, because again, no surges needed. I'd probably just replace time dilation with something like Reaper, for example. So in conclusion, really fun build, can be very powerful in the right circumstances. It's really popular for the Red Hat 9 dungeons right now, particularly with Ekthar being the best one-phase possible weapon in Ultimatum mode, at least. And then in Prophecy, it's almost certainly just going to run over the Phalanx Echo, which is going to be the best farm location in that dungeon for farming manifolds and the new weapons coming out. So, if you have Winterbite collecting dust in your vault right now and you want to try a new build, this is right up your alley because you will just have fun beating bosses up literally with a pointy stick. As always, I'll have a dim link down below in the description for this build if you want to try it out on your own. And while you're down there, maybe you follow the socials. They're free. I swear. I promise. Other than that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and is much appreciated. If you want to go the extra mile, you can leave a like and or comment below as well. If you don't know what to leave as a comment, you can leave... I don't know, man. I'm starting to run out of random words to say. Ravioli. You can leave ravioli as the comment. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.